Welcome back. Now, Monday does mark the 75th anniversary of the US firebombing of Tokyo, the deadliest air raid in history. It resulted in around 100,000 civilian deaths, a number comparable to the atomic bombing of Hiroshima the same year. However, as RT's Caleb Moppin reports, it's an atrocity that many have forgotten.
America's use of atomic bombs at Hiroshima and Nagasaki is common knowledge. However, there are other atrocities from that historical period that have slipped out of the memory. Monday marks the 75th anniversary of the United States launching bombing raids against Tokyo. U.S. officials knew full well that many civilians would die, and that did not deter them.
Flying fortresses will be dispatched immediately to set the paper cities of Japan on fire. There won't be any hesitation about bombing civilians. It will be all out.
The idea was to demoralize the Japanese population by inflicting death and misery on an unimaginable scale. The bombs that were used were incendiary, and a city made mostly of wooden structures caught fire rather quickly.
You're going to deliver the biggest firecracker the Japanese have ever seen.
Major General Curtis LeMay, the mastermind behind the operation, said that the victims were scorched, boiled, and burned to death. The USA went on to use this tactic of mass bombing of civilian areas in both Korea and Vietnam. 75 years later, do Americans have any knowledge of this atrocious act of war? Let's find out.
The biggest bombing raid? I don't know.
Hiroshima and Nagasaki were nuclear bombs during World War II.
Hiroshima.
No, actually, it was the Tokyo bombing raid of 1945 that had the highest death toll. Did you know that?
The Tokyo bombing?
Yeah, the firebombing. We often don't think of the crimes committed by our own side during the war. Why is that?
Because Americans don't do anything wrong. We're wonderful. We never torture anybody. We don't waterboard. We're just a wonderful, loving people who believes everything our government tells us.
The people who decided at the end, the politicians, they just take it and say, okay, we might lose a lot of civilians or whatever, and they still do it because for them power is more important than than the people.
Former U.S. President Barack Obama visited Hiroshima and Nagasaki and tacitly acknowledged the horrendous impact of using nuclear weapons there. He met with some survivors. However, those who did not perish in the Tokyo bombing raids have been widely ignored.
I know about the bombing of Tokyo on the night of the 10th of March, but only from history books.
Honestly, I don't know anything about the bombing of Tokyo.
I know about the bombing of Tokyo, but I'm surprised that it's already been 75 years.
Our parents and grandparents never told us about that, so we only know what we learned from TV and newspapers. I don't think there's enough attention being paid to this in our education in Japan.
I know about the bombing of Tokyo, but I have forgotten the exact date. I think the media should tell us more about this tragedy, not just about Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
From a theoretical point of view, I see why the Americans thought this was a price worth paying to end the war, but personally speaking, I'll never be able to accept this, as up to 200,000 people were killed, including women and children, and the elderly.
It's sad that very few people in the West seem to remember the suffering and innocent victims of that war. It looks like the people there remember only the atomic bombs dropped on Japan.
Now, there's no consensus among historians about whether this mass bombing was actually necessary in order to defeat Japan. However, it is widely acknowledged that mass death and civilian casualties on such a scale should not be forgotten. Caleb Moppin, RT, New York.